Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April 27th, 2020 remote City Council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this point, I'd ask the clerk, when she's ready, to please call the roll.
Okay, Councilman Gary Donovan.
Councilman Gary Donovan, Councilman at Large here, present.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, Council at Large here.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky, 1st District, present.
Councilman William X. Conlon.
Councilman William X. Conlon, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Liz Johnston.
Johnston, 3rd District, present.
Councilman Mitch Galagnano.
Councilman Mitch Galagnano, 4th District, present.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton, 5th District, present.
Councilman Peter Massaro.
Councilman Peter Massaro, 6th District, present.
Councilwoman Trenae McGee.
Councilwoman Trenae McGee, 7th District, present.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli, 8th District, present.
Councilwoman Robert Bruno.
Councilman Robert Bruno, 9th District, present.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen, 10th District, present.
Chairman Ron Quagliani.
Ron Quagliani at large, present. Thank you, Stacy. We are all in attendance this evening. At this time, I would like to take a motion to amend the agenda to include an executive session for contract negotiations for ADP. Is there a motion to amend the agenda?
Motion.
Stacy, you picked that. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I'll second it, Robert Bruno.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion and second? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that executive session will be under new business item 8. It'd be a discussion and possible action on the ADP contract. Thank you. Also at this time, I'm just going to make sure everybody's on mute. I'd like to take a moment of silence for two longtime city servants and city employees that passed within the last couple of weeks. The first one is Linda Bruno. Linda was 27 years with the city as the administrative assistant to the Public Works Department. Many years after that, was the co-owner of 744 West, and most recently was the Republican deputy registrar of voters until her passing. Her son, obviously, is Councilman Robert Bruno. Also, Gordon Bergman, another longtime city employee. Gordon was a Vietnam veteran who received the Purple Heart. He had worked for the West Haven Police Department and the City Public Works Department for many years. He's the vice president of the West Haven Veterans Memorial Museum, and both of those, if we could take a moment of silence and thank them quietly for the work that they did for the city of West Haven. Thank you. At this time, we'll enter into public session. I asked the clerk, I believe that we received one email comment just prior to 5 p.m. this evening. Stacy, you could read that into the record. You're on. You're on mute, Stacy.
Okay. Oh, I think I'm off now. Am I off?
Yeah. You are, yeah.
All right. It's from a gentleman named Daryl. I don't have a last name though, Ron. Okay, good evening, members of the council.
Stacy.
Yeah?
If I would say that if there's, unless someone could help us, if there's not a first, last name and an address, then I think we should hold until we can establish. Those are the published rules of public comment. Unless
Yeah, there
someone
is
here-
nothing down at the bottom other than Daryl.
Okay. Why don't we put that off then for tonight, Stacy, okay?
Okay.
Unless anyone from the council could shed some light on that, we'll pass on public comment until we can get a name and address for the record.
I do know it's from Daryl Cummings, but I don't know his address.
So Stacy, why don't we park that for right now? And if we could establish the name and address, then we could revisit it later on in the agenda, okay? Everybody all right with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, at 7:05, we could enter into the regular council meeting. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of April 13th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Barry Cohen.
Barry Cohen motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Robert Bruno. Second.
Second, Robert Bruno, Gary Donovan, Peter Massaro. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, if we have to ask the clerk to pass out tonight's communications.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we only have one communication for this evening, and it's communication A from the tax collector in regards to overpayment refunds for the month of April 2020, which will be filed with tonight's minutes.
Thank you, Stacy. If I could go back to you, and my understanding is the public comment is from Daryl Cummings, 14 Candy Avenue. If you could read that into the record.
Okay. Good evening, members of the council. Based on the format of only one page, I will briefly touch on 3 items. First, I would like to thank the council members Colleen O'Connor and Gary Donovan for donating to and assisting with the Serving of Our Servers campaign, helped to provide city restaurant employees with care packages as they are disproportionately affected financially by business shutdowns. I would also like to acknowledge Minority Leader Robin Watt Hamilton and Chairman Rod Quagliani for their generous donations. Nearly $1,800 was raised in 5 short days and resulted in over 120 overflowing bags distributed. Since the governor has alluded to extending the opening of businesses after the 20th of May date, we are in the process of planning Serving Our Servers Part 2. Details will follow shortly, and I would hope that the remaining members of the council will consider participating in the sequel. Secondly, based on the Finance Committee's meeting with Planning and Development on the 22nd of April, it has become apparent that the stagnation of the city faces regarding economic development will continue absent significant changes. It is with that in mind that I respectfully recommend that the council as a whole communicate with the mayor to request the immediately resignation of the Commissioner of Planning and Development, and I commence a search for a qualified individual for that position. While I concur with the Commissioner's new vision, which includes the oddly named Life Science Metro Center, which sounds eerily like the Bioscience Enterprise Zone, which members heard details of earlier this year and was included in the platform of the Republican candidate for mayor in 2017, and I am sure most now know who authored that. The inability to answer council members' questions, lack of appreciable development attributed to his tenure of employment, his own acknowledgement of concurrent private employment, and a pending complaint to the city's ethics board detailing a conflict of interest far exceed any rationale for retaining said individual in the.
Stacy,
Yes?
Stacy,
Yes?
just hold a moment there. Lee, are you on the line? I want to stop you, Stacy, because we've been spoken to by Corp Counsel regarding having discussions about city employees without them being notified. So I just wanted to make sure that that we're on proper legal ground to continue.
Mhm.
Lee Tiernan.
Has left the meeting.
Stacy, are there other points to the letter that you could offer that we could come back to that part when we get a hold of Lee?
Let's see. I'll just give it a brief scan. Well, and we have some VA flag, care of the flag, some VA comments.
Why don't we read the rest of it then? If it's not referring to any city employees, why don't you read the rest of it and then we'll come back to that part.
All right. Well, I've got to be honest with you. I think I'm pretty finished with the whatever the rest of that was. There was one paragraph that I didn't finish. I'll skip to the next paragraph. It says, lastly, a topic that unfortunately has had to be addressed multiple times, the administration's lack of care and respect for the flag. A few moments ago, each of you recited the Pledge of Allegiance, which includes the lines to the flag and the republic for which it stands.
Has joined the meeting.
It is the symbol under which millions have served, and nearly 3 million of our ancestors, friends, and relatives and neighbors have been killed or injured. We have one of the finest VA medical centers domiciled within the city limits, which increases the daily population of veterans within our borders. While some flying in disrepair may have not been highly visible or apparent due to location, the current flag in question is located on city property, the corner of Main Street and Campbell Avenue. It flies 40 feet from the mayor's office. That same mayor has stood beside the flag at Memorial Day remembrances at the Green and below it during the Veterans Day ceremonies at Bradley Point and proclaimed a profound respect for those that served and sacrificed. The solution is simple. If one is flying in disrepair, replace it. If an available replacement is not available, remove it until a suitable flag is procured. Please individually and collectively remind the mayor that respect for the flag is not based on political expediency or convenience, and do not accept any excuses. Thank you, Daryl.
Mr. Chairman? Can anyone hear me?
Attorney Tiernan, are you on the line?
Yeah, I was speaking last time, but I assume no one heard me, so I hung up and dialed back in. Can you hear me?
Yes, Attorney Tiernan?
All right, very good.
Yes, I could hear you. Could you hear me?
Yeah. I didn't hear that.
I think we just lost the chairman.
Oh,
Oh, he's back. Chairman, are you back? Oh, he's gone again.
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, great.
there you go.
Yep, you're on. You're both on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Lee, could you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Is there a delay? Yes, I can hear you.
Robin, could you hear me?
I can hear you. I can tell that you're kind of buffing, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Robin, I think you should move forward and if, with the meeting.
Do we want to hear what Lee has to say?
Yes.
Okay. Lee, can you were saying something? I don't think any of us heard you.
No, I think the chairman's correct.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try
the only-
a different location. So, if you could hear me,
Mr. Chairman, you're in and out.
yes, Lee. Before I go in and out again, I just want to make sure we have a member of the public that has a letter that we're reading into the record that speaks about a city employee.
Yeah, so it speaks directly to that city employee's employment. So what should happen is the employee in question should be alerted of that communication. And then that employee has the option, if the council wants to discuss it further, that employee has the option of having that discussion be an executive session. But we shouldn't have any more information on that this evening without the employee being notified and with an opportunity to make that particular decision.
Okay, understood. So then, Stacy, did you read the rest of it? That was the end of it about with the flag and. Okay. We'll continue on. You all can hear me now? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, so we will continue on to committee meetings. The first committee meeting is the Finance Committee, Councilwoman Hosky.
Okay, I'm getting my paperwork so I can read it. Okay, the time is now 7:23. The Committee on Finance is in session. Members present are Councilman Robert Bruno, Councilman Peter Massaro, Councilman Barry Cohen, and Councilwoman Robin Hamilton. With myself acting as chair, we have before us communication, hold on, B from 413, agenda from Mayor Nancy R. Rossi in regards to the memorandum of agreement between the City of West Haven and the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management. I would like to entertain a moment to bring this out favorably.
Barry Cohen, make the motion, bring it out favorably.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Robert Bruno, I'll second that.
Robert Bruno, thank you. Any discussion? Councilwoman Cohen, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just really one comment that I know was mentioned to us a few months back, but now that you read it, it is disconcerting as not just a councilman, but just as a resident. And there's nothing we can really do about it, I understand, but I think it needs to be pointed out to the public. On page 3 of the memorandum, 6B, it says basically that they will direct up to $4,015,000 of restructuring funds to the city, provided that the conditions for payment are met. Fine. Then the disconcerting part is we as council people are working very hard, as well as much input from the public, to take a look at really trying to take a look at all the expenses, see where we can reduce, where we can save, where we can do benefits for our city and for our residents. And there's a statement in here that says the secretary may direct less than the $4,015,000 based on favorable budget to actual performance for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. Now, I understand that because the state doesn't want to necessarily give us additional money if we're going to be making the money back. But, it has been questioned, at least my constituents have questioned that, here you are working really hard and the whole council looking to save money. And there's really no incentive for you because if you save money, then the state just gives you less. And my explanation basically to the constituents is, well, you know what? We're trying to basically ensure that best practices and moving forward, that we are going to be fiscally responsible. But again, I do understand my constituents' points on this that, we're working hard, but at the end of the day, why bother? At the same time, we bother because we want to make sure that we are being frugal, responsible, and effective with the city's money and the taxpayers' money. That's all I have to say, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman. Would anybody else in the Finance Committee like to say anything? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. I'm going to close until later, correct, Chairman?
Correct.
Okay, the Committee on Finance is closed at 7:27. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. Now that I ran down the street and found a signal that'll work, hopefully I'll be with you the rest of the evening. Unfinished business, we have none. I will enter into committee reports if the clerk could read communication A into the record.
I thought you called me a kook. Okay, we have before us communication A from the tax collector in regards to overpayment refunds for the month of April 2020, which will be filed with tonight's minutes.
Thank you, Stacy. And now we will have the committees report out to the council. First committee is the Finance Committee, Councilwoman Hosky.
Also, the City of West Haven, your Committee on Finance, to whom was referred the matter of memorandum of agreement between the City of West Haven and the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management, reports that the committee met on the 27th day of April 2020 to consider said matter. It is the unanimous opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Resolved, the City Council of the City of West Haven hereby approves and authorizes Mayor Nancy R. Rossi to sign an execute the memorandum of agreement dated April 4th, 2020, revised with dates between the City of West Haven and the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management.
Councilwoman Hosky has brought forward communication B from the last council meeting's agenda from Mayor Nancy R. Rossi in regards to a memorandum of agreement between the City of West Haven and the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management. Is there a second?
Robert Bruno, I'll second.
Second by Councilman Bruno. Is there any discussion?
I got a question.
Seeing none, all in favor? Yes. Councilman Massaro?
We signed this contract. Actually, how much longer are we going to have Marv in the city? I mean, is this our third budget that's going to be balanced, or we got to go another year with this organization?
I can
I
answer.
think I'll defer that to the mayor on that.
The rules are this. There are two main rules, one of which is that we have 3 consecutive balanced budgets. Well, actually 3 rules, no deficits in any way. But the main thing is that we would not be taking money, restructuring funds from our. So long as we have restructuring funds in our budget, which we do in 21 and 22, we still can come on, we still are under MARB and they still have control so long as we're taking restructuring funds. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Please voice your discussion, because again, I don't have the best signal. So if anybody's looking to speak, please say it and not just raise your hand. I don't see any other discussion. So I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. Next next committee is council as a whole. Councilwoman Hamilton.
Good evening. The time is now 7:31. The Committee of Council as whole is in session. All members of the council are present. We have before us tonight Communication D from the 413 agenda from Corporation Council in regards to the sale of the Allentown Public Library building. I'm looking for a motion to approve the following resolution. The City Council of the City of West Haven hereby, in accordance with the City Council Rule 25B, determines that it is the best interest of the City of West Haven to authorize Mayor Nancy R. Rossi to enter into a contract to sell the library building to the Acorn Group.
Councilwoman Hamilton has brought forward that motion. Is there a motion to approve that?
Approve. Peter Massaro.
And can I get a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Second.
And Lee, you're still on the phone?
Yes.
Can you give us a summary of this, please?
Yes. So I brought forward and provided the council with information concerning the proposed sale of the library. There seemed to be strong interest in the council to try to get a better deal. We reached impasse on either Thursday or Friday. I informed the council chairman and the mayor that we had reached impasse. The mayor was able to revive the negotiations. She was able to get some more money proposed from the Acorn Group in terms of their interest in purchasing the building. So the only thing that would change in my original proposal is the purchase price. But they would also retain the right to seek from this council a tax appeal in the future. Now the council would have the right to accept or reject that request in the future. That's a discretionary item. What you're going to have before you is Councilwoman Hamilton has read a resolution. So based on the way your council rules are, if you look to Rule 25 ABCD, you will note the council lays out a procedure for the sale of land. And so what the council needs to do is, 1, express an interest that they sell the land to the Acorn Group. 2, reject both bids because both bids will not fulfill the sale. The Acorn Group's bid is lower than what you're going to authorize for the final price. And then the third resolution would be to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract pursuant to the terms that have been presented to the council in the past to approve it. So right now, as just a general statement, this resolution is just the council agreeing to the concept of selling this building to the Acorn Group. You're then the second resolution will be to reject both bids because the bids don't fit. If you approve a bid, then you don't have the increase in there. So you can't approve the bid. And then the third resolution, of course, approves the ability to make the sale at the higher price.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, any discussion? Yes, Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that, if indeed this motion passes and it allows the mayor to enter into discussions, from what I understand, at a higher than the 290,000. I think that's great. I did do some research because it concerned me at the last meeting, as it did a number of council people, looking at, one assessment said the building was this much. The next day we get another assessment saying the building is a lot higher. Then we say that the building's about the same worth as the Blake building. Lots of different information going around and inconsistencies and concern that I think a number of us basically shared. And, there was also some miscommunications, I think, with the developer along the way. So it seems, and I don't necessarily know the original proposal really provided a full picture of what we could have considered. So I'm glad to see if this motion does pass, the mayor can straighten this out. But what I did want to bring to the council is, before this evening, it did concern me very much, Madam Chair, where I call the assessor's office to find out how much is that building assessed for, And again, they basically have it assessed. Now remember, 70% assessment, of course, at a $1,724,930, which means the total value that they've assessed that building for was $2,464,000. Now, I am no land expert, and I by far don't know assessments, but that's an awful high price. And I say that because whoever who is going to eventually occupy that building, or knowing that that building has to be remediated and a lot of remodeling, a lot of replacement. There is asbestos in that building, amongst other things. They have to basically throw in $1 million, $1.5 million, at which point it's a catch-22 where at the end of the day, they're going to do $2 million worth of repairs plus whatever they assesses. It's going to be almost unaffordable for someone to sell it. So I would highly recommend that during the negotiations or further discussions that the mayor has, that they take a look at that assessment value of that property, because for all the negotiation we can do for that building to be sold, knowing that that owner is going to have to pay an unbelievable, exorbitant price, tax is a little bit, it doesn't seem to connect the dots here. So, whatever the final price is, and we'll revisit it, I am going to bring back to the council my concern if that assessment is reviewed, the current assessment of total value of $2,464,000, be closely scrutinized to make sure that that is the right assessment. I have my questions about that. I'm just given the condition of the building, because we want to get a good buyer there. We want to remodel the building. We want to make it fit in with the community of Allentown, be an asset to the residents as well as being an asset to the students and to the Atwood and the building. So I do bring that out, that the negotiation and further discussion has to take into consideration the assessment, which I just I don't think it makes sense, my opinion. That's the only thing I wanted to bring out, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Anybody else? No other questions? No other discussion? Okay.
Councilwoman O'Connor, I think, has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I couldn't do unmute quick enough. Are we allowed to ask at this time how much more money they're offering us, or is that for a later time?
I think that we can do it. Oh, so what I have before me is $325,000.
Okay. I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you.
Anyone else? And I don't see anybody else.
Madam Chair, Lee Tiernan, just for Councilman Cohen's interest in anyone else, if I may.
Sure.
If you check public buildings whose value relationship does not trigger property taxes. So, for example, public housing buildings in the city and publicly owned buildings in the city. If you look at the valuations, they don't seem to relate in any way to the actual value of the property. That is something that assessors do. It's not different in other communities. I can't necessarily explain it. I'm pushing our assessor for more logic and reason in this area. I can tell you that yes, the Arlington Library for some reason is valued at $2 million. I knew that when I asked the purchaser to to agree not to file for a tax appeal. I can tell you that any purchaser of real estate, when they get new real estate, there's a state statute that says basically if the property you're buying, if it's tax exempt and it shouldn't be taxed, or if the tax assessed is so egregious and outrageous, you can go to Superior Court and ask that a more reasonable rate be assessed. For example, the building I am sitting in, City Hall, is valued at about $8 million. I don't think anybody would pay $8 million for the building I am sitting in. The conference center down on the water is valued at $7 million. I don't think anybody would pay $7 million for the conference center. Crete, the senior center up in Allentown, which has a river flowing through its bottom, is valued at $4 million. I don't think anybody would pay $4 million for Crete. It is just a quirk. I believe the reason is that when they do their first evaluation of public buildings, no one objects. So there's no one to sort of check the work of the assessor. And even when the economy declines, even when property values decline, because no one checks that assessment, the assessed value continues. And it will be corrected. Any new buyer on the private side will have the right under state law to challenge an outrageous assessment, and I'm sure they will, because that property is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it, and obviously no one's willing to pay $2 million for it. So I know it's confusing. It's confusing to me, quite frankly, the way that assessors do their job and the way that assessors come up with valuations. But in the end, when you get to court, it's really the battle of the appraisers. And if we get to court, if a new owner takes us to court on that $2 million valuation, which I'm sure they will, we will hire a commercial appraiser to do a proper commercial appraiser, probably use the same person we used to do the Vine property, and I'm sure they will hire a proper commercial appraiser, and we will get the right evaluation.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Lee. I'm glad to hear you say it was a quirk. And I wasn't stating that the property's worth $2 million. What I'm worried about is that the assessment being so high that people take a look at how much taxes they have to pay based on that assessment. So as, bringing them to court or not, I go back to part of that discussion is probably the elephant in the room and could be a showstopper if we just basically take a look at what we have. Now, obviously, no one is paying taxes in that building or the West Haven City Hall or a number of other buildings that you named. But now that we knew that this building is going on the block and being sold, instead of having to go to court, I maintain that we do a responsible revaluation of it. And I think that only makes sense. It only helps out our discussion and negotiation. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, and Councilman Cohen, I had a frank discussion with the assessor today. She's aware of the concern. That concern has been raised by you. It's been raised by the mayor. It's been raised by others. We're in a reval period, so we're going to be watching this very closely. You're correct. If I don't think the concern is that somebody, if we try to sell an asset, that somebody looks at the valuation of the asset and that they think that's what it's worth. I think you're correct, though, that they are concerned about the tax payment. So we have to make sure if we're going to put an asset on the market that we have a proper evaluation. And so I think you're going to see, the assessor has been alerted to this. I think you're going to see a change in the new reval that Vision Appraisal is doing.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I don't see any other hands. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? This motion carries. We have before us the next part of this, which reads, the City Council of the City of West Haven hereby in accordance with the City Council Rule 25D reviewed and rejects all submitted bids for the Allentown Library. Can I get a second?
Second.
Bruno, second.
You need a motion first, Councilman.
I'm sorry. Can I get a
Motion
motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Councilman Bruno, may I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Donovan. Is there any discussion on this part of it?
I got this question.
Councilman Massaro?
Yeah, you keep stating in the paperwork, the West Haven Library. That is not the West Haven Library building. That should be the community center, the Allentown Community Center. The library does not own that building. I think the wording should be changed on that.
Yeah, we brought that up. That came up before too. And Chairman, you and I had a discussion on it. Can you explain why we kept it? I think it's because that's how the bid went out. So
Yeah,
we
that's
had
how
to kind of stay with it.
Right. And we could, listen, if it's easier, you could just say 1 Forest Road, if that's easier. I believe that's the address.
If I may,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, to put Councilor Massaro at ease, it is the only library building that the city owns.
Well, it's the building.
So I don't think it's going to create confusion.
Well, not with us maybe, but I think Councilman Massaro wants to make sure that the community doesn't think that we're selling an asset that belongs to the library, right? So the library is housed in a city building known as many different names, but it's 1 Forest Road.
1 Forest Road, I'm fine with that.
Is there any discussion, any other discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? This motion carries. The next part of this is the City Council of the City of West Haven hereby, in accordance with the City Council Rule 25B, approves and authorize Mayor Nancy R. Rossi to enter into a contract between Acorn Group and the City of West Haven for the sale of the Allentown Library, or what is it, 1 Forest Road building for $325,000 in pursuant to terms previously provided to the council. Can I get a motion on that?
I make a motion.
So moved.
All right, Councilman Cohen. Can I get a second?
Second, Peter Massaro.
Peter Massaro. Is there any discussion? Councilman Donovan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Lee, once this is sold, immediately go on the tax roll for next year? If it's sold?
Yeah, Councilman Donovan, Lee Tiernan. It actually goes on, and it goes on at the assessed value described by Councilor Cohen. What I would anticipate is when we close, what would happen is within minutes of the closing, they would file in Superior Court an appeal of that valuation. And then we would hire a commercial appraiser, they would hire a commercial appraiser, and we would come to an agreement, or a judge would issue a judgment on a value that is in relationship to what we call FMV, which is fair market value.
Okay. And everything else in the contract stays, correct? The 3 years?
Yes.
Where you can stay in that building until they're ready to move, and then
Right.
they're going to $5,000 to move over, or if they move over to another building, correct?
All the other terms previously disclosed to you would remain. The only term that changes is price and their ability to file a tax appeal. Doesn't mean they get a tax appeal.
Right.
Just retaining the right, like any other property owner, to do it. Everything else stays. Their requirement of investment in the property, their requirement to, in good faith, negotiate up to 3-year lease with the library. If the library stays, what money they get. If the library decides to leave, the money the library gets. All that is included.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hosky?
Good evening, Lee. So when they want to take us to court to reassess the value, how much are they costing us and us having to do all of that? Because they're buying us a building and giving us so much for it, but in actuality, they're going to actually cost us. What is typically the bill on that for us to go to court and do this whole thing with them?
Excuse me for 1 second, please. Councilman Bruno, you muted? Thank you. I'm sorry, I was getting.
Yeah, the cost of an appraiser in court, it might, arguably, if we do it in-house, you're paying people salary, it's our time. Whether or not there's a dollar figure on that, I don't know. An appraiser, it's a commercial appraisal, could cost as much as $2,000, $3,000. I would point out to you that it's hard to blame the buyer for that valuation of the property. And only if that valuation is accurate would it make sense that you would charge someone for challenging that valuation. I think there's no way in a month of Sundays that I could find a buyer for that property at $2 million.
No, I'm not.
I don't know what it relates to.
Right, I'm not saying that you should, or that we would, or there's even a possibility of doing it. I'm just saying that, to close on that property, we're supposedly making $325,000 in all of these taxes, but in the next day, they're going to be filing papers to cost us upwards of $5,000 just to reassess the building, to lower the taxes and not pay us what?
I don't know, you got cut off. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
You're on mute, Bridget. Councilwoman Hosky, you went on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that happened. I wasn't touching anything, so I don't know how I muted myself. I don't know, when did I stop talking? I was just saying that closing and then the next day them trying to fight the assessed value so that their taxes could drop is legitimately. So they're really not buying the building for 325,000. They're really buying it for 320 because we're actually going to have to go to court with them and hire people to get what we want. That's all. Just not really a fan of that. My opinion.
Again, the tax revenue that I predict it will generate, I think, was $30,000, and I stand by that prediction. Annual tax revenue.
Is that all? Okay. Councilwoman O'Connor?
Hi, I think my question's for Lee. I know as the library liaison, one of their big things was a fair market value for the rent for them to stay there. And excuse my ignorance, but how do we determine fair market value?
Well, if this is approved, I've said this to the chairman as well as some others on the council. If this is approved, I will offer to help facilitate that because I will no longer, I will not be in a position that conflicts with the library at that point. We will have sold a piece of property and the obligation will be on the new owner to negotiate in good faith. And if they need assistance, because again, they are strapped for funds on a number of levels, if they need assistance in trying to determine that and trying to negotiate a good stance on getting fair market value, I can assist with that. And it's not, I mean, you know, we tried to do that. The council may, some of the councilors may recall that we negotiated a lease with the daycare center. You know, you start with fair market value and you came down to a value that worked. So we'll just have to wait and see. But the fair market value is what it is. It's based on what other entities in the city are paying for rent. So you can't just pluck it out of the sky. And, you know, with all respect to everyone and with all respect to the great community of Allentown, it's going to be what it's going to be. It's not going to be the kind of rents that people pay, you know, in New York or Stanford. It's going to be a comparable rent. Now, it's also, though, not going to be, there's monetary values on commercial rent, for example, storage. Storage might be at $1, $2, $3 a square foot. Class A office space overlooking the ocean on, you know, the 20th floor in this area, Connecticut, might be as much as $30, $35 a square foot. You know, so you're going to be in a range. My guess is you're going to be in a range between $12.50 a square foot up to $25. That's what I think is the range, and I'd have to see the kind of space they're providing. You got to remember, what they charge is going to be based on the space they're providing. They're not. The space is there, right? They're going to put some money into the space, but they're not fully renovating the space. They're not doing a long-term lease. So all these things factor into what is the proper lease amount for that property. And again, we have other leases that occur in the city. They're published. They become public record. There are publications that publish those lease amounts. So we're going to be able to get, they're going to have to bargain in good faith, and we're going to know what bargaining in good faith means. And again, the one way we can help the library in that is the language of bargaining in good faith, because one of the things that the council is expressing here is that you want a presence of the library in Allentown, which means that contract term is important. So if they are not bargaining in good faith, that's a violation of the contract, and then the city does get involved in that violation to ensure that a fair market rent is negotiated.
Thank you. That makes me feel much better. I appreciate your answer.
Is that all, Councilwoman O'Connor?
It is. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilwoman McGee?
Hi, Lee. I want to know, with someone bidding on a property and then backing out, like say if it falls through, what is the history on someone else coming in soon after to bid on it again, or does the property sort of like just sit there?
I mean, I could point to you properties that, quote, just sit there. This one's unique in this way. It's not a secret as to the interest that this developer had in this property and their development plan for the whole area, and how the development plan is connected. I would say primarily, although not exclusively, but I would say primarily with the University of New Haven, and what having the University of New Haven there lends to a performance of their leaseholders and trying to maximize what leases they get. So we have a unique developer who wants the land. Could there be another developer? You know, I would caution everybody. History tells us that, you know, you're going to hear an unemployment rate that's going to be pretty shocking in May. The Department of Labor is going to come out with a pretty shocking number. And it's probably going to be, it could be as high as 15, 16%. That's not a marketplace where generally, historically, real estate values increase. Frankly, if this fell through, and again, the council decides, I can only advise, but I would be advising and I would give you data to support that you would want to wait to put this out again, because I think your valuation is going to be, and sale price is going to be way down for that reason. And, you know, I think we're kind of lucky that someone is still, despite everything, willing to take that risk. You know, there's a lot of projects, you know, City Hall's closed. It's hard to get a title search done. It's hard to even get some deals going. We're trying to facilitate getting deals going. I think it's very risky. I don't like the idea of trying to sell assets until I know a little bit more about where this COVID is ending and what it's doing to our economy and what the long-term impact of that is.
Thank you.
Is that all, Councilman McGee? Councilwoman McGee? Anyone else? Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Robin. Just a couple of things. I know that most of the counselors have already mentioned this, but I think it was important for a couple of reasons. I'm supportive of this. Originally, I was not supportive of the original proposal. I'm supportive of this. It shows good faith. It seems to me it shows good faith from the developer. And quite honestly, I think Council Tiernan made a good point about we really don't know what is next. I think we do know that if this developer buys this building, that he's going to have an asset that we know as a city that won't be on our expense ledger anymore. Won't have to worry about deferred maintenance of this building any longer. It will be an asset that goes on the tax rolls if we should rebid this, and maybe some other entity that wouldn't be taxable bids on it. Then we would find ourselves not getting the tax money, and this ensures that we have a library that stays within the Allentown section, which I know is important to a lot of us here. So I think all in all, when we put all the pieces to the puzzle together, it's not perfect, but I think it's an acceptable course of action for me to cast my vote in favor of it. So that's what I'll do this evening. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just kind of want to ditto on that. It is in the Allentown section, which kind of includes Councilwoman McGee and Councilman Massaro. And yes, just as you said, we do want the presence of the library. And I think I feel confident about this sale because we do have answers to where the library may be housed next time. I would feel very differently if we didn't know where they were going. I think they took a tour of the Blake building and they seem to be pretty pleased. They can see the vision of themselves being in there. That again made me feel better too. They'll be closer to a school. And I know that this is a second part of what we're talking about, but it's the whole picture. It'll be closer to the Carrigan School. It's not too far from the bus stop. Yeah, I know. I just think that this will work out. And to have a nice coffee shop does all sound nice to me. Is there anybody else that has anything to say? Yes, Councilman Cohen.
I would just say that even in a good economy or without a pandemic, I think it would be very hard to find a real estate person that would be willing to spend up to $2 million in remodeling a building that is in disrepair, has been in disrepair for decades, and to also put it on the tax rolls. So I think that although I was very concerned, as some of you were, with this initial sale, I think when you take a look, if it ends up being $325 at the end of negotiation, then you have to say to yourself, gee, was it the original $500,000? In my opinion, it was more than that when you think about rehabilitating that building and approximately $30,000 a year on the tax roll. So I'm inclined to support this. In terms of where the Allentown Library may end up, you know that they're going to still have the opportunity to be in that same building if they decide to move to the Blake building. I think at the end of the day, there will be some type of marketplace rent. And that's something that as we go into budget season, I know some of my fellow council people may disagree with me here, that in any budget that was devised pre-pandemic from the library or from the mayor's proposal, it'll be interesting to see, when there was a bid from the library, it was almost like, okay, who's going to pay your mortgage? Well, okay, now they're going to be paying rent. Who's going to be paying their rent? I think that's a fiscal discussion that we're going to have somewhere along the line once this building is sold, because right now it's an opportunity that I think that we should seize regardless of that one factor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay. With that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? This motion carries. Mr. Chairman, the committee of your council in whole is closes at 8:07.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hamilton. Next up is adoption of ordinances previously presented. There are none. Council liaison reports. Councilwoman Finelli.
Hi, I just want to report on the Sustainability Committee. Public Works has recently ordered 50 new no smoking decals and 30 new no smoking signs to be put up around the beaches. And within the next month, Robin Parsons from the Sustainability team will be presenting their yearly report to the City Council. And that's it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Finelli. Councilwoman O'Connor.
I just wanted to echo what Councilman Hamilton said on Thursday morning. Part of the library board and the mayor and myself went to the Blake building. Our expectations were low, but we could definitely see potential. The library was very happy. I think they're finally convinced that we want to keep a library presence in Allentown, and that they're more willing, to work and see that the Blake building can be a wonderful asset for them as well as the city. So I felt really positive on Thursday about that. That's all there is to say on that.
Thank you, Councilwoman O'Connor. Any other council liaison reports? Councilman Bruno.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there has been no commission meetings at the PD with the epidemic that's going on. So there's nothing at this time to report as far as any meetings with the police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bruno. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll enter into new business. I will take a motion to enter into executive session for discussion and possible action regarding the ADP contract. Invited into executive session will be Mayor Rossi, Finance Director Chaplinsky, and Corp Counsel Tiernan. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilwoman O'Connor, second.
Second.
Robert Bruno.
Second, Robert Bruno, Gary Donovan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will be going into executive session. We'll just take a 2-minute recess until I get word from our IT specialist that we are in fact appropriate to move forward.